Welcome to another episode of Beyond Coaching. Got my good friend Wes Simmons from the 3D Institute with me. Wes, thanks for joining.
Very excited to join you, Rob. Excited for
So
these
this,
conversations.
so we got a series of conversations coming up with you and others about 3D coaching, the 3D Institute. But before we dive deep into there, I think your background's fascinating and how you got into this work. So I want to start there, but tell me. Let's start with who were you at age 25? Tell me about Wes Simmons at 25 as he's trying to figure out what he wants to do with his life.
Well, I think not to stretch it out any longer, but it's hard for me to think about being 25 without first thinking about being 15, because just last weekend I had the high honor of speaking at my high school football coach's funeral. He was 91 years old, battled Parkinson's for 25 years, but prior to that struggle in the fourth quarter, this was a man who was a legacy coach, a legendary coach, Vin Bonuchi. He's in 7 different Hall of Fames. So the success that he was able to have, not just in football, but also in wrestling and baseball, kind of everything he touched, kind of had that Midas touch, but to be somebody that was formed in that program and now do the work that I do now, and then have the opportunity to reflect back and really talk about the impact that man made, not only in my life, but so many. It's hard not to start right there, because I was very fortunate to have a 3D coach in high school that was as good as they get.
That had to have been fairly abnormal at the time, right? That approach. Tell me how you experienced that and how you saw other coaches doing things.
It's kind of all I knew, really. I moved to Excelsior Springs, Missouri, going into 7th grade, and I had not played football before that. So really my first organized football was in 8th grade at Excelsior Springs, and had good coaches there. But then within 1 year, I'm into Coach Bonucci's program, and I would submit that even the middle school program had tremendous influence. And that was just kind of who Coach Bonucci was. I mean, he was this guy that, he would hold you to a high standard, and he was anything but a soft coach. I mean, he could lay into you and chew you out, but he would never say a cuss word. He would always have his arm around you on the way off the practice field. But the way that he would draw stuff out of you, but you knew it was because he loved you. And we all knew that. The whole community knew that. And that was just my experience. Had the opportunity to go play Division II football. Next thing you know, I'm handed off to another legendary 3D coach, Mel Tjeerdsma. And Coach T, I'm now a little bit older and more mature. And especially once I decided at the age of probably 20 to pursue coaching, I started really paying attention to things I wouldn't necessarily as an athlete, but I changed my perspective, looking at the coach approach to all things film and even how meetings were conducted. I started just to really see the magic and the intentionality behind it. But it wasn't really until I stayed on and did my grad assistantship that I saw that firsthand. And I learned this later about Coach Bonucci too. It wasn't just that they were lucky or they were blessed or they had the Midas touch. No, they were intentional, and they worked really hard, and they had a process that created that kind of environment. Now, at the age of 25, I'm in my 3rd year of coaching. It's now time to leave the nest and go out and get that first real coaching job in the college market. That was my vision.
So were you a graduate assistant for a few years at Northwest?
Yes. I played, graduated high school in 1996. My playing career at Northwest was 96 to 2000. And now it's 2003, and I'm ready to get out of the nest and go look for that first job. And I began to realize for the first time what you alluded to earlier. My experience was not the norm.
Yeah.
My experience and the environments that I've been a part of, sadly, I was not able to readily find available with great opportunities to pursue that. And I just kind of got bit by an entrepreneurial bug to start building out a professional development platform so that we could train the next generation of coaches so that kids have an experience like I was able to have. I say like this: every kid deserves at least one 3D coach in their life. I was fortunate to have two, so I feel a little bit responsible to help replicate that, and so that's what we're trying to do through the 3D Institute.
Tell me, so one of the ways I've been connected to 3D for years now, and I think of my coaching journey where I became a college coach at age 26, and figured out very quickly I don't even know what I don't know, and then had a terrible time finding training resources. So, what do you think of it is about the coaching world that, I mean, 3D absolutely fills this gap, but we don't train coaches very well and don't have a great system across the country to do that. It's more a lot of places, hey, you like sports, here's your whistle, go. What do you think's kept us from more systemically really building up coaches and training them?
Well, part of it's just that we're America, and no one's going to tell us what to do in my state or my community or my country. So, there's not in a lot of countries, they'll have like a minister of sport,
Mm-hmm.
or, they'll have more organization at the grassroots level because it's more intentional at the power performance level to create that feeder system. And we don't have that. So the youth sports world is kind of the Wild West.
Yeah.
And now we're into a generation and or two removed from the Coach Bonuchis, and it's the art of coaching that's been handed off generationally and then supported really by families and communities. There was just a different social structure in yesteryear, I would say,
Yeah.
where in some ways coaches didn't have to be as 3D. I didn't ever think of Coach Bonucci as somebody that I personally needed to fulfill a father void in my life. For example, I had a great dad. I mean, but he was that for so many. But whether he's filling that void for the people that need that father-like figure or not, the moms and dads, we were all in support. And Coach says had all the power, and it was about the team. And so that was kind of a message that was reinforced at home. If I got in trouble at school or with a coach, and then they called my parents, I get more trouble when I got home. I think the dynamic shifted a little bit too. And so I think we're trying to catch up, with changing times. And so more and more coaches' education is coming in. In hindsight, it's like, it's so obvious that this was a need all along. It should have been self-evident, but for whatever reason, coaching education was not put on the same plane as other forms of professional development, even though I would submit it's as or even more important in today's world than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. One comment, then one more question. I'm going to go off script a little bit on you. I know one of my challenges right when I got into coaching, and I was similar to you where I wanted to coach, so I'm watching with a critical eye. But one of my most influential coaches is a guy named Mike Gear, and he was the dad of one of my best buddies, was our Little League coach, and then was our high school football, baseball coach, legendary guy, just got inducted into Hall of Fame. But my first year out, I tried to be Mike, and he's about as extroverted as they come, and that's just not me. And finding my voice was a challenge. Did you experience that at all, of trying to be these guys that had an impact your life and it wasn't authentically you, or did that fit? Just kind of give me your thoughts on that.
I was never in that head coach role, first of all. So, I was always limited in my ability to actually, try to lead a program because I was always an assistant. Now, in 2003, I left coaching to pursue what's now the 3D Institute.
Yeah.
But I've remained coaching along the way. So I've served at the high school level, in the middle school. I'm probably going to be coaching at the high school level again this year. But a lot of my coaching now is kind of on the backside of the work we've been doing with 3D for years, or it's grown with it. So I'm cursed with so much knowledge with 3D that first of all, I'm merciful. I mean, like, I look back on my coaches and I know they didn't do everything right, just like I didn't do everything right. And it's not about perfection. But now with the knowledge I have now, I can kind of eat the meat, spit out the bones and say, okay, coach didn't do that perfectly, but man, they did this so well. And this is why it worked. So I intentionally try to bring that into my coaching.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I think that it's absolutely essential that you be you.
Yeah. And I think that's something. I think it's why we've gravitated towards, because we use 3D at Friends University. It gives you a framework, but allows you to be authentically you, and I think that matters a lot. But all right, take me back. So you said 2003 or four. You say, okay, we need to do this coaching training thing, and how do we do this well? Uh, I want to say you told me once it was started with coaching circles. Is that accurate? Or tell me kind of about that process of moving into 3D.
Close.
Close.
I was dating a woman for years that I knew that I would marry. She was in St. Joseph, Missouri. Now, I was a Bearcat. This is Griffin land. So, every sports rival out there, everyone out there that has a sports rival, you can relate to this, but I was like, oh, I'll never live in St. Joseph. Or a rival.
That's how us Kansas people feel about the state of Missouri, I think.
Sure. Yeah. And to take the Chiefs from us, and, that may get reversed. But
sometimes she has an irrational hatred for the University of Missouri.
Yes.
Being a long-time Jayhawk.
A little bit with the conference breakup, but I very much grew up with that.
Yeah.
But at that time, I was also experiencing kind of a spiritual awakening in my life, and I was feeling called into really to create something that I felt like the world needed, which is exactly what we're talking about: an online professional development platform for coaches. And you were close. It wasn't Coaching Circles, but it was called the Coaches Circle.
Okay.
It was a web-based platform, and I really didn't have the 3D framework. I had the experience of playing for 3D coaches, though I didn't have the language. And so I knew that there was more to it than just X's and O's or skills and drills training, as important as that was. But I knew there was, again, I wouldn't have called it necessarily the mindset at that time, but I knew that it was the way we think about, and probably the best term I had at the time was sports psychology. But I knew there was a psychological aspect to coaching, but I knew there was something more than that too. And the spirit, the heart, that deeper part of us, I knew that was part of it too. But I didn't have the framework to really build that out. So I started not really knowing where I was going, but we started building. And again, this was 2004. So YouTube doesn't exist yet.
So even online groups like this were pretty unique at that time, right? You're on the front end of online education. Yeah.
Yes. I had an old VHS camera, or a little mini Hi8, I think this was called. And we'd go out and we'd film stuff in analog. And then I had a converter, and we'd put, I knew nothing of this. I was a PE major, but I got bit by an entrepreneurial bug. And I had enough confidence instilled in me by great coaches to think I could do it. And I didn't have that much to lose, so I went for it. But what it did was it really gave me incredible experience in tapping into a lot of creativity that was lying dormant in me a lot. I mean, I grew up, I'm a mix of athletes and artists in my family. And so my mom's whole side of the family, they're artists, and I've got a little bit of that in me. So there's a creative side of me that found some expression, obviously, in coaching, and probably not enough. That's another conversation. But this was now a creative outlet in a much more traditional way, meaning I was creating videos and creating graphics, and I just kind of became my own school building that project. And we grew the company to, I bet we had 250 schools subscribed at one time.
Oh, wow.
But I knew it wasn't what it was, all that it could be. It was lacking something. And I was losing passion for it because of that a little bit, because I'm like, okay, really, what is this doing? Where are we going? Are we really meeting a need? And then in 2009, for the first time, I heard Dr. Jeff Duke share the 3D framework. And for me, I was like, that's it. That was the missing framework to help us really build out a platform that can develop people professionally and holistically.
Yeah. So how'd you get connected with Jeff? Jeff Duke, founder, he wrote the book, so to speak, on 3D. How'd you get connected with him? Tell us about that.
Jeff Duke at that time was teaching at the University of Central Florida, and he was teaching a class called 3D Coaching. It was a 3-hour master's class, met on Monday nights. But he also had a lot of relationships within the network of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, FCA, staff in Florida. had a lot of relationships there. They realized the content that he was teaching and how that was really, first of all, had good alignment with FCA values and everything like that, but was really a relational deposit that could be made into the coaching world professionally, you know. And so they brought Jeff in, and he'd do a Saturday morning clinic over here, and then this staff would talk to that staff, and then next weekend he's over there at that. Next thing you know, he's up in Georgia. And now there's about a 2 or 3 year window where Jeff was really just traveling around the country doing Saturday morning 3D coaching workshops in different venues. And that's where I first encountered him, was in St. Joseph, Missouri. He was here. He did a workshop called 3D Coaching, Motivating the 21st Century Athlete. And there's about 150 coaches there. He shared the content. And right after he was done, about half of them kind of swarmed him afterwards and go, we need more of that. How do we get more of that? And his answer was, well, you move to Orlando and you join my night class. We meet 6 to 9 on Monday nights in the fall semester. And I'm sitting there listening going, we need to talk. And so Jeff and I built a relationship, and I kind of became the cheap labor force for what later became the 3D Institute, because I'd already cut my teeth on it. I'd figured out how to do a lot of the stuff that really prevents people from starting an enterprise. A lot of times is the startup capital that it takes. I mean, I just bootstrapped it and taught myself. So I was able to bring that to the team. Jeff obviously had the 3D framework. Mark Hull was very influential in that, in fleshing out the 3D content beyond, was really just being taught as a coaching methods class in a undergrad and master's course at UCF, into a whole operating system now that organizations can bring in to help them architect their culture.
So I'll speak from my experience as I dove in, as I got experience coaching and was looking for just how do I do this better. I think a realization I had pretty early on is you got to know your stuff. I mean, you got to know your sport or else you have no credibility. But long term, that's not the stuff that keeps you in it or keeps you making an impact, motivating guys, winning over the long term. That's what drew me in, and doing it in a way that's positive. Was that the stuff that drew you into 3D? Or talk more, just what about it? Like, it captured you, but why?
I think a big part of my why really goes back to my experience in college playing for a coach that had created this kind of environment. I say this kind of environment, now I'd call it a 3D culture, or you could say it's a transformational culture or a life-giving culture. I didn't have any of that language as a kid, as a teenager. I just know what it felt like. And it felt like a really functional family. Not perfect. I mean, we got that many brothers, there's going to be fights. There's going to be drama. There's going to be some, there's going to be unhealthy competition and bouts. And there's going to be, again, it's not perfect, but it wasn't a dysfunctional family. It was a family. It was a functional family. And for me, again, I came from a good family, but now I'm away. And so from my parents' perspective, I'm sure they're very thankful to have coaches that were trying to reinforce a lot of stuff they tried to put into me as a kid. But all that stuff got put to the test on April 22nd, 1998, when my older brother, Jason, was involved in a head-on car crash that took his life. And I was a sophomore, and it train wrecked me. I mean, it was a devastating event. And I really did not, especially in the immediate aftermath, see how I could possibly go and love something like football again, or even stay here. Like, I just got to go home and be with my family, But it really was quite the opposite of that. I mean, I wanted to be there for my family and stuff, but I think the way that authentic family wrapped their arms around me, literally and figuratively. I mean, I remember at the funeral, we had busload after busload after teammates, support staff, teammates' families. I mean, people that had no direct connection to my brother Jason
still showed up,
but it was because they were part of our Bearcat football family, and it was just authentic. And you know, that was such a formative time, obviously. I mean, you talk about, I mean, that you grow through things like that
Yeah,
in the right
can imagine.
environment, or it'll train wreck you. But I mean, I was able to grow and so like now by the time I'm 24, 25, looking out on what do I want to go do with my life, I knew that coaching could have that impact, but I knew that if we could coach the coaches again, so that every kid has at least one 3D coach,
Mhm.
that's what drove me. That's what still drives me.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know that part of your story. Um, yeah, that's rough. So you meet Jeff, you say, this is it. Talk about the development of 3D from there. You go from cheap labor to now you're the CEO of it. So fill in that gap.
We launched until
Or maybe free labor.
Yeah. um, we didn't launch the 3D Institute until 2014 officially.
Okay.
And it was way more organic between, 2010, 11, 12, 13. Now, Jeff, he wasn't on staff with FCA, but he was very much in relationship with FCA. And he wanted FCA partnership in the development of 3D, and they were willing to invest in it. So it ended up being a great partnership. FCA started gathering some of their leadership, and we did a thing called the Coaches Ministry Academy in Orlando, Florida. And it was 3 years, and we just brought some of their staff, but it was also coaches that wanted to be trained up to present 3D. Basically, it's kind of like a presenter school is really what it was, but we were trying to figure it out. And we had a partnering organization that was one to invest in it. In year one, we built out, really it was all about presenting. It was like, okay, let's train up some people to present and give them a PowerPoint, turn loose. That's not going to make much of a dent, but it was a starting point. What we learned over that but that also bought us time. And then over the first year, we kind of turned some people loose to go just kind of make noise, I guess, with 3D. I don't know. They give them some brochures and a short PowerPoint and said, let's get people thinking like this.
Yeah.
With the hopes that it would open up opportunities for more training later, which it did. But we quickly realized that we needed an online curriculum for the professional development market. So we brought Jeff in. We used Staley High School in North Kansas City. The North Kansas City coaching staff. It's probably like, I don't know what year this was, 2012. And we did like an all-day 3D workshop. He just taught his content at UCF. And we filmed it, and we chopped. It was all long form. So that first course that we created, it was 15-minute chunks of content. Yeah. It was really good. It was really good, and especially for its time, I felt like it was pretty high class content in the coaches education space. But as that grew, the feedback we got from FCA staff and the people that weren't on FCA staff that were just kind of presenting was, okay, everyone's kind of starting to think this is FCA, and ADs and people like that are like, we can't do that here, even though it wasn't faith-based content. It was professional development, authentically based in research, taught at a university. I mean, it was all of that, but that became a door to entry in some parts of the country. And so it became very clear that we need to go ahead and establish the 3D Institute, which we did in 2014, remained in partnership with FCA, but definitely separated the branding. And now 3DI has taken that into really over the last 2014, so almost 13 years. Mm-hmm. In large part in partnership with FCA, especially internationally, but we've gone into 60 different countries. I would say we've trained, just through our certification courses and our state association courses and all those things we do, thousands and thousands of coaches have now heard the message, and it's pretty humbling.
It's remarkable. One thing you guys say is, I think you've said, you define success as helping other people be significant. That can be a hard thing to measure. Tell us about how you guys help people be significant. But I think the flip side I worry about in my own life is, how do you identify when you're not being significant? Dive into that thought process a little bit.
Yeah, to me, when you use the language of significance versus success, the lens I immediately put on is, I question what lenses am I viewing my dream of success through.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm viewing my dream of success through the lens of self-interest, really, I want to get mine. I want to get to my positions. I want to take care of me and myself and all that. And that's the only conversation we can have with ourselves in authenticity. Or am I seeing the dream through the eyes of others? To me, that's the difference between success and significance. Now, I just painted success in a bad light. I think success is only bad if that's where it stops.
Yes.
I think that's where success is amoral. I mean, that could be a blessing or a curse, depending on what it does to you, or what you allow it to do. But for me, this thought process goes back really, it's funny you say that. When I first got a vision for the 3D Institute, it was in the environment of an organization I was a part of called the Joseph Company.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph Company was a network of business leaders who were pursuing significance in their entrepreneurial efforts. But the definition that I'm describing actually comes from that time. And it was all based on really the story of Joseph of the Old Testament, who was the original dreamer. I mean, when they were list recorded, I don't know. I guess there's probably some, Greek poems like that, but that are older. Yeah. So Joseph was a dreamer. He had a dream of greatness. Everyone's bowing down to him. Well, his brothers didn't like hearing about that dream. They didn't like the idea of bowing down to little Joey. So what do? They threw him in a pit. And they felt bad about it, so they got him out, and then they sold him into slavery. And then he ends up in the house of Pharaoh in Egypt, in a strange land. And, he kind of prospers wherever he's at, but it's certainly not a dream. The dream of greatness isn't come true, that's for sure. But, he's got 3 hots and a cot. He's doing all right. And then he's thrown into prison. But then all of a sudden, he goes from the prison to the palace. He interprets the dream of Pharaoh. Pharaoh promotes him. Now he's in charge of the #1 economic superpower of the world at that time. And everyone's bowing down to him. Dream come true, right? Yeah, the dream was his brothers bowing down, a little more specifically. The sheaves, the stars and the moon, if you go back and read the story, but they're referring to his family, his brothers.
Mm-hmm.
That was the dream. Well, that happens years later. When there's a famine in the land, they come begging for bread, not knowing it's Joseph. They're bowing down, saying, have mercy on us and provide us because you are prosperous and we are poor. And he realized in that moment that his dream of greatness was not really about him at all. It was about using the platform of my success as, or maybe you should say, using my ceiling for success as somebody else's floor. I'm going to pull them up. I'm going to lift as I climb. My significance is their success. And so we call that the life cycle of the dream. And, anybody listening, hopefully you have a dream of greatness. You need to be chasing a dream. I believe that. I tell my kids that all the time, because it's who you become in the process of the chase that matters, not whether you actually reach the dream or not. But you got to be running down a dream. Tom Petty says so too, and I agree. So running down a dream, but there's going to be a life cycle to that. Mm-hmm. At first, the dream is in the first phase of survival, because the only way you can see it is with eyes closed. It's like an acorn that's buried in the ground. It's packed full of potential, but until it grows and breaks, it's in survival. You don't know if it's really alive even. Doesn't make it not real. You just can't see it yet. Mm-hmm. Then the acorn breaks the dirt and turns into a little seedling or a sapling. Stability. It can grow out of survival. And so your dream is in stability when there's some evidence of growth. I mean, you got to wear rose-colored glasses required, maybe. It's not the dream of greatness, but we're no longer just an acorn either. For Joseph, he's in the prison. He's a slave, but he had favor. God had given him favor. So he'd risen to a place of stability even in those environments. Again, not the dream, though. Success. Now I'm king, or number two to the king. Now everyone's literally bowing down. Or the bank account's rolling now. I got 2 houses. I got 4 cars. I got a boat. I got a pension. I got a retirement. Success. Nothing wrong with success. Good things happen with success. Now that acorn's like a strong young oak tree. It can withstand some storms. But the true life cycle of the dream is not just survival, stability, success. It's significance. It's when the strong young oak becomes a grand oak, shoots out these large branches, and now it does what? Protects, reproduces. It creates some shade from the heat, some shelter from the storm for others. Or in Joseph's life, it's when he was able to now see the dream through the eyes of others. So to me, to coach or lead or live a life of significance is to run down a dream, but do it not just for selfish gain, but through the eyes of others. Mm-hmm. That's what I think about.
My follow-up, stealing another one of your lines. You can't be a tour guide. What is it? You can't be a tour guide to a place you've never been.
That's not my line. That's Mark Hull's line. But yeah.
Mark Hull's line. Mark, my apologies if you're listening. So balance that out for me. As you're helping people, and I think that's my follow-up question, is you guys are getting even beyond sport now in your work, but talk about, you can't be a tour guide wherever you haven't been. How do you help people get there?
Well, I think you said this earlier, and I think it's another good opportunity to bring it up. That's first and foremost. That's probably a first dimension statement, mm-hmm. Right? That's what, like you said, you've got to know your stuff. You've got to know your craft. You've got to know the X's and O's of what you're doing. Otherwise, you're not going to have the credibility to really make a deeper impact on minds and hearts. The first dimension matters, and that's what I like about our framework. Is that it doesn't skirt that issue. It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah.
There is a process of excellence. But if you can first, and the good news is in the first dimension, there's a lot of resources to help us grow. So any coaches or leaders that aren't where you want to be yet, good news, lots of resources to help you with that. Mm-hmm. It's the second and third dimension stuff, though, that creates the opportunity to make that statement hit on a whole nother level. Mm-hmm. Because here's why it's important. Dr. Mark Bauer is the athletic director at the University of Nebraska-Kearney. He did his dissertation studying the impact of 3D. And he's measured the impact of 3D on the non-cognitive skills of coaches, adult coaches in the workforce. So not kids, but the coaches. And it was awesome. He was able to showcase that 12 of the 13 areas measured, grit, resiliency, all these second and third dimension attributes, were positively moved in the right direction. We moved the needle. 8 of them were statistically significant. That was awesome. But the other half of his study is really the point I'm making here. The other part of his study was looking at the likelihood of values transfer to happen between coach athlete in an athletic environment. And what he found in his research just showed empirically what we all kind of know.
Yeah.
And that is that values transfer will happen. It will happen. Mm-hmm. You can't stop it from happening. It's going to happen. The question is, are we being intentional with what values that we are imparting to the next generation? Because they're absorbing it.
Yep.
Good, bad, or ugly, they're absorbing it. And so that statement, you can't be a tour guide to a land you haven't traveled, that means, hey, let's, again, not be perfect in all these things. We don't have to be experts, but can we be at least general practitioners? Can we learn some things and maybe unlearn some things that will help us at least quit doing damage to kids?
Yeah.
Unintentionally, mm-hmm. Unintentionally, jokingly, but
unintentionally, but it's very real.
Because what comes out in the pressurized moment sometimes isn't what you meant to say, or it's not what you wish you would have said.
Yeah.
And so again, we want to uh, raise the bar of excellence in the coaching world, not because it's bad or broken, but because the opportunity is so great.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the responsibility is so great that we want to be intentional about helping the next generation impart the right values transfer to the coming generation,
Mm-hmm.
because it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's happening one way or the other. Now, very briefly, and we'll get into this more in the future, but we're talking 3D terminology, first dimension, second dimension, third dimension. And I can tell you I'm going into year 11 as an college athletic administrator. And the big issues I deal with are when second and third dimension issues are not handled well and intentionally. So just whet everybody's appetite. First dimension is coaching the sport. Give everybody what everybody's appetite of what the second and third dimension is.
The second dimension is the mind or the mindset. So I think of it like this. It's the you could use the language of social, emotional, relational component of the sport. If you don't like that, you can think about how do we speak to ourselves and to each other. How do I make myself feel, and how do I make others feel? So it's the team dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
So the issues are things like motivation. So a lot of times this is something you may try to use as a coach, but it's also a dialogue we're having internally about what drives me, right? Yeah. So motivation is about the inclination to pursue and persist toward a desired outcome. That's the definition. So what is it that will make me pursue? I want it, and persist. I'm willing to stay after it, right? So there's, most coaches understand that that's important, but they don't really know what all their options are. So they resort to fear. There's other options that are actually, so we got to train to that. Confidence. This is not about just the skills. You got to have skills authentically mastered if you're going to have an authentic confidence. I mean, or at least well on your way to mastery, right? Like you've got to have the skills to execute, or your confidence is really just kind of fake.
Yeah.
But you can have all the skill. I mean, you could crush in the cage, but how many know that there's you can see it in some kids' way they approach a plate, they struck out before they got in the box.
Mm-hmm.
Yet in the cage, they're just raking the ball. Like, what's the difference there? So it's a belief thing. It's belief in the skills. So you got to have the skills, but how do you repair the belief system, or how do you build up the belief system so that they have confidence and believe in their skills so that they can go execute under pressure? Emotions, man, that can really train wreck a culture quick and break relationships. And, so emotions makes a terrible master, but it's a great servant. Like when we know how to master our emotions instead of letting them master us, now we can create an environment of psychological safety, which is preeminent for growth.
Yep.
Confidence, emotions, team cohesion. What do you do to get a group to gel? There's 4 things that we teach, 4 principles. And good news is all of the coaches listening are already doing at least 2 of them. Questions are, we being intentional on the relational side, group relational, individual relational, and what's our strategies? And probably people are doing a lot of these things, but understanding why they work and how to be even better at them and be more intentional, that's the magic. And then goals. Goal setting is a second dimension issue. We very much advocate for a process-based approach to goals. Take it even a step further. It's a character-based process to chasing goals. And now we're into the third dimension, character, right? So the character, the third dimension, identity. Wow, when we don't help people understand who they are and whose they are, then by default in a competitive environment, my experiences and research shows that they're going to hitch their wagon to a performance-based identity.
Yep.
They're going to think that their value and their significance and their self-worth, that's all the third dimension stuff. It's all based on numbers. And that becomes very problematic, not only in an athletic career, but in a life. when who I am is based on what I do, well, what happens when I lose what I do? Who am I now? So it's got to go deeper than that. And we've got to help people attach their identity to purpose, because identity drives behavior. But if it's a purpose-based identity, I believe that's what drives the character-driven process that helps you achieve the results. It takes a little longer to get it rolling, but I believe that those are the steps of the flywheel right there. The flywheel.
Yeah.
The shortcut is see behavior and punish it. Either we're going to get along, team cohesion, or we're going to run, cardiovascular.
Oh, it's so interesting. We're Impactful Coaching Project. Me and Dustin have been writing a book over the last year, and it's based on a survey we did. We surveyed small college coaches on really what it takes to build and sustain a program. So it's going to be called Sustaining Excellence. And these coaches had at least 10 years experience. They had a certain level of winning that we identified to reach out to them. And all their responses aligned with exactly what you just said. So it's just, it's getting beneath the hood, and sustaining it's not done with the stick over time. Everything you said just aligns with it.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
So you have been, in some way or another, studying you've been rolling 3D out to your coaches, correct?
Correct.
And then also tracking some metrics with the students under their care.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that when you shared that research with me was that when it came to the issue of motivation, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you say that coach was actually pretty low on the list? But everything about him was directly connected to how the coach created the environment, something like that?
Yeah. So, I'll give you a positive plug. We've been doing 3D with our coaches for 5 or 6 years, and we've seen every metric we measure go up. But we started 3 years ago asking kids, and this was just out of how do we work with our kids better? But we asked them, we've done it for 3 years. First year was open-ended, what motivates you to participate in your sport. And then the next 2 years, we asked them to rank. We took the top 10 answers we got qualitatively that first year and put them in a list and said, rank order them. And every year it's fluctuated a little bit, but the top answers have remained the same of relationships, love of sport, winning is very low, minus a different tangent we can go on sometime. We had 2 teams that ranked winning high and they both stunk that year. So it's wasn't process oriented is my takeaway. But within the relationship piece, number 1 and 2 have flip-flopped a little bit, but family and teammates were the motivators. And then coaches have been a distant third every time. And my hypothesis is the coach doesn't have to be the face, but they are the cultivator of the environment, which is why I'm attracted to 3D. It gives you strategies on how you do that. And it's work we do at Impactful Coaching Project too, of the coach is no less important than they've ever been. But I think we've evolved in the last 25 years of, instead of just coach can act out they want, yell or whatever, and you're going to do it. I think kids are willing to question more now, which in some ways I think is healthy. But it's the coach is cultivating environment of, coaches don't like to hear it sometimes, psychological safety and mastery and process oriented, to where that's the way to get the most out of people. So even if you hate kids and you don't care about making an impact, I think it's also the way you win.
I think about the shift from, Coach Bonuchi and Coach Tjeerdsma and their era to where very much, I would say, it was a power era because of the authority of the coach and the backing of the parents that the coach had and all that. That if they didn't have to be 3D, but if they were, like mine was, it was like, wow, you got a really incredible situation. Yeah. But there were a lot of coaches in those old school eras too that were much more drill sergeant and things like that too. But now it's almost like that model just, it's not going to be allowed to last much longer, I don't think. And so what that shift is, I think, I think it's healthy, is as a coaching and leadership world, we need to shift from power to influence. That's the shift. Mm-hmm. From just making everybody do what you say because you're the coach and you got the whistle and that's it, and you control the clock or the playing time, And that's still very much a reality.
Yeah.
But using my power, instead of using my power over to just my way or the highway, you got to learn how to use your power under to serve and cultivate and create an environment where really the better forms of motivation and those things will grow. So, and I think of that as the shift from power to influence, is at least.
Yeah. And I think the other element, and it's counterintuitive, but I'm convinced of it. So we have a generation of kid now, the kids we work at the college level, the post-COVID kid who missed some developmental years. There's conflict management issues. They're online, but I'm convinced they can sniff out a fraud that's not authentic quicker than any group I've worked with before this. So we have this, there's an interesting book called The New Psychology of Leadership, which I think is what we're talking about. But there's also an element of, I think, if kids will still play for a yeller. I mean, if you're a screamer, that's just your nature of it. That still works. But you got to be really good on the relational side and putting principles in place where kids know you care about them. Because if a yeller tries to not be a yeller and they're being inauthentic, yeah, kids are going to bail. So all this is wrapped up into knowing yourself and then leading from the heart.
Yes. I think about, kids will still play for a yeller,
but not a jerk.
Because at the end of the day, if they're, I mean, so many of, I'll just say us, of the people of sport do struggle with that performance-based identity. Mm-hmm. It's amazing what we'll put up with in the name of, oh, it's good for me, or it's, building character or whatever. And it's just, there's a better way. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's just, there's a more excellent way to really get the results you want. Mm-hmm. And when you do it that way, it actually creates the legacy you want.
Yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it? Well, let's start to wrap up. Let's tease out a little bit. So this is the first of a 12 episode series we're going to do. And I think it ties back some to when you were talking about the acorn and the evolution of 3D's evolved. And now you're working with more than just sport, and you got a big plan over the next year. So why don't you share about it briefly as we wrap up?
For years, we do workshops, even all over the world, and mostly just for the people of sport, coaches, sometimes athletes, but it was always an athletic audience, booster clubs. And a lot of times it would be the booster club parents, or it would be the principal that was, dipping in and out of the workshop, that would approach us afterwards and go, 3D, we need this for the classroom, or we need this for the business, for the business world. And we, I absolutely agree, even in the moment, because I realize that, first of all, 3D isn't necessarily a coaching framework. It's a framework for humanity. Yeah. We're using it as a coaching framework, but it applies to all humans. So anybody that's leading humans, it applies. That can apply whether your team is in a locker room or a classroom. In fact, I could point to some schools up in the northern part of the country that have adopted this, and they actually refer to their classroom teachers as classroom coaches. I think they need to be both, but I think they're emphasizing that because the point is there is a coaching aspect to leadership. Same thing in the locker room, classroom, boardroom, or even at home in your own living room or dining room with your kids. If you're in that leadership role, there is a coaching element. We help with that. And so we are now starting to expand that into other sectors. We're actively, I would say, looking for one pilot education school in each state. We're not there yet. We've got a handful of states with one. So we're really new to the space, but we're getting incredible feedback, especially with some of the development that 3DI is been taking place over the last really 6 months that is going to take our impact into the education and business and sports space to a whole other level. And I can't wait to kind of unpack that with you as we go.
Cool. And it will all not culminate, but looking at a big thing next summer, bringing people to St. Joe and and diving deep across kind of an interdisciplinary deal, right?
Yes. So we are going to do the 3D Culture Summit 2027. It's going to be in St. Joseph, Missouri, the city of coaches. The reason we're the city of coaches is twofold. Number one, we're literally the city of coaches historically. I mean, we can make the case that more stage coaches in the westward expansion came through our downtown area. Some people believe that any other point in recorded history, the largest flow of human migration, 7 national trails either connected or originated out of St. Joseph. So there's a great history of the stagecoach. We're going to use that to theme the conference because a coach is a covered carriage that takes a person of importance from where they are to where they want or need to go. And so St. Joseph was a destination city, not as a landing point, as a launching point. It was a city built to launch dreams. People came here on their stagecoaches with their money, their families, their stuff, and their dream, quite literally, their American dream. They came here to get resourced, equipped, and launched. And it's in that spirit that we are going to bring a national gathering to the city of coaches. And we're going to tell you to bring your team, bring your dream, and you're going to leave with a plan because we're going to resource, equip, and launch you just like the days of old.
Good stuff. So more to come on that, but at least wanted to introduce it out in this first conversation. So Wes, yeah, thank you so much, and looking forward to some more conversations.
I can't wait.
All right.